Ah, dear viewer, I bid thee welcome to a tale most macabre, one that unfolds in the very heart of old New Orleans, a city of mist-laden streets, grand balconies, and vibrant music that floats upon the night air. But do not be deceived by its charms, for lurking within its shadowed alleys and behind its shuttered doors once prowled a most dreadful fiend, the Axeman of New Orleans. And legend has it that only one thing could protect you against this wicked killer: jazz music. So join us as we explore this sordid story of murder, mystery, and music. Before we dive into this mystery, have you ever wondered if you could solve a case yourself? If so, then today's sponsor, June's Journey, could be for you. June's Journey is a visually striking hidden object game set in the 1920s, wherein you're tasked with finding clues and completing puzzles on your quest to solve the murder of June's sister and brother-in-law. That's not all, however, as the game is updated regularly, adding new quests and content. Just like most of you, June doesn't have a badge, so relies upon her wits and intelligence to get the job done, interacting with a wide range of characters. Some helpful, others less so. Fancy a change of pace? Well, you'll also get to customize your island with a wide selection of items, along with fixing up your mansion. So, if you'd like to join the millions of others already enjoying June's Journey, you can download and start playing for free by scanning the QR code on screen or by clicking on the link in the description box below. The year was 1918. The world reeled from the horrors of war, yet within the confines of this southern metropolis, another terror gripped the populace. It began in the dead of night, as so many dreadful crimes do. On the 22nd of May, Joseph Maggio, a grocer of Italian descent, and his wife, Catherine, slumbered peacefully within their home. Unbeknownst to them, they were not alone. A man, whose face was never seen, had gained entry by chiseling out a panel of the back door. He armed himself with an axe he found on the property, but this wasn't the only weapon in his arsenal. He set upon the couple with brutality. Their throats were slit with a straight razor before the axe was brought down upon them, either to complete the grisly work or obfuscate the use of another weapon in the attack. Joseph, though gravely wounded, clung to life long enough for his brothers to find him. However, he sadly perished soon thereafter. His wife suffered an even crueler fate, for she expired at the scene, her head nearly severed from her body. The city shuddered, for such savagery was not the mark of an ordinary criminal, but of something far worse. And indeed, the horror was only beginning. Barely a month had passed when the axeman struck again. On a fateful morning of June the 27th, Louis Bessumer, a grocer of foreign birth, was discovered lying in a pool of his own blood within the quarters behind his shop. His head bore large wounds inflicted by the blunt and unforgiving edge of an axe. Beside him lay Harriet Lowe, his mistress, her face similarly bludgeoned. Miraculously, both survived, at least for a time. Harriet's wounds leaving one side of her face permanently paralyzed. Both were able to provide some testimony, but the tale grew even stranger. They initially stated they too had been attacked in their sleep, but Harriet's story changed several times. She initially stated the attacker was a man of mixed race. Over time, she began to point the finger at Bessemer himself. During the investigation, secret pockets and compartments had been found in his clothes and suitcases, along with letters in a foreign language. Lowe then claimed her lover was in fact a spy working for the Germans. For this, he was arrested but quickly released, only to be arrested once more when Harriet passed away after surgery to prolong her life failed, resulting in Bazuma being charged with her murder. He would ultimately spend 9 months in prison before being acquitted by a jury. As the city debated his guilt, another attack would occur. On the 5th of August, mere weeks after the attack on Bazuma and Lowe, the fiend struck again. Anna Schneider, a young woman in the bloom of pregnancy, retired to her bed, ignorant of the horror that crept through the night. The intruder, as before, found access to the home through means unseen, setting upon the poor lady with merciless force. Despite her bloody wounds, she too survived the attack, though with no memory of the incident itself. Thankfully, just 2 days later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Investigators found little viable evidence at the scene, and though some believed the attacker had used a lamp by the bedside to bludgeon their victim, detectives believed this was the work of the axe murderer. And it would seem the investigation did little to deter them. Only 5 days later, on the night of August the 10th, a name was added to their grim ledger, that of Joseph Romano, an elderly gentleman also of Italian descent. His nieces, who lived with him in the same home, awoke to the sound of struggle and, rushing to their uncle's aid, saw a fleeting figure vanishing into the darkness. Romano himself lay upon the floor, his skull shattered by the same weapon that had felled so many before him. Though he made it through the night, he would succumb to his wounds 2 days later. The home had been ransacked, though no items stolen, and the killer had used a chisel to gain access to the property. With the attacks filling newspaper columns throughout the area, police were soon inundated with reports from people stating they had either seen the killer or had found axes in their garden. A retired detective named John D'Antonio theorized that the Axeman was also responsible for a set of similar murders that had taken place 7 years earlier, some of which had been attributed to disputed serial killer Clementine Barnaby. Perhaps sensing it was too risky to strike again, the Axeman would wait exactly 7 months before they struck once more on March the 10th, 1919. The targets this time were the Cortemilia family, consisting of husband and wife Charles and Rosie, and their young daughter Mary. Once again, a panel had been removed from the back door through which the killer had gained access to the property on the corner of Jefferson Avenue and 2nd Street. Both Charles and Rosie would suffer skull fractures but survive. However, Mary would die almost instantly after suffering a blow to the back of her neck while being cradled in her mother's arms. The story would take another twist when, after recovering from her wounds, Rosie pointed the finger at father and son Orlando and Frank Giordano. The pair had been the first on the scene after the attack and raised the alarm. However, with few other leads to go on, the Giordanos were arrested and eventually charged with murder. Both were ultimately found guilty, with Frank being sentenced to death. It's claimed that Charles vehemently rebutted his wife's proclamation, and the couple divorced soon after the trial ended. The Giordanos would spend over a year in prison before Rosie sensationally came forward to state she had lied about them being the attackers. Some claim she pointed the finger at the pair as she was jealous of their wealth and success. The Contamelias had leased a store from the family before they took it back 4 months before the attack. Others believe she buckled under pressure when police took her from the hospital bed and placed her in a cell until she confessed she knew who the attacker was. Authorities would have hoped the arrest of Frank and Orlando in connection with the axe murders would have calmed the public's fears. However, the opposite was true. The city was now ablaze with despair, and whispers of the Axeman spread like wildfire. Doors were bolted, axes were hidden away, and the streets of New Orleans were filled with anxious souls, wondering who might next fall beneath the butcher's hand. One might have thought this horror to be an isolated affair, a madness committed in the throes of some personal grievance. But no, the axman struck over and over again, always in the same fashion. The victims, predominantly Italian grocers and their families, all attacked in the dead of night. The method? Of course, axes were his weapon of choice, often found on the victim's property, but the axeman was also known to slash throats and bash heads with heavy objects. What was the motive, you may ask? Perhaps you may think robbery, except the valuables were never taken. It could have been revenge, but against whom? And why did the axeman target these Italian grocers in particular? Was it mere chance? Or did some grim design lurk behind his dreadful selections? Indeed, the frequency with which he assailed these shopkeepers suggests a motive beyond simple randomness. Might it have been a vendetta steeped in the old-world feuds of Sicily and Calabria, transported across the Atlantic like so many immigrants in search of fortune? It is well known that the Sicilian Mafia, or La Mano Nera, had long extended its shadowy tendrils into the commerce of the Italian Quarter and other cities across America, extorting tribute from those who toiled under the gaslit glow of their storefronts. Could it be that the axeman was no solitary madman, but an enforcer of unseen masters, wielding his dreadful instrument as a message written in blood? Or perhaps the man was a drifter, possessed by a particular loathing for this industrious class, whether due to personal grievance, ethnicity, or the twisted desires of a deranged mind. We cannot say. Yet in his cruel precision, his calculated slaughter, there lurks a whisper of intention, a design most foul, yet tantalizingly obscure. As if this tale were not dreadful enough, the villain sought to further torment the people of New Orleans. On the 13th of March, 1919, the Times-Picayune newspaper received a chilling letter written in handwriting that was quite messy and deranged. It read, "Hell, March the 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as I have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you, Orleanians, think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fancy. Signed, the Axeman. A ghastly proclamation indeed. Yet it was not the most peculiar aspect of this letter, for the man, in his madness, had a most curious demand. He would spare any dwelling where jazz music was played. This genre, both lively and eccentric, had never before been used as a talisman against evil, but that night the city erupted in melody. Every cafe, tavern, and home echoed with the sounds of horns and pianos. Bands played into the early hours, and to everyone's disbelief, the Axeman did not strike. In fact, the letter's release marked a period of peace from the supposed demon. However, this would not last. The next canonical victim was another grocer, Steve Boker. Again, he was set upon as he slept. Upon regaining consciousness, he ran into the street in a confused state, only to pass out once he realized his head bore a deep wound. He would ultimately recover, but could not give further details about his assailant. Next would be teenager Sarah Lauman, who was discovered bloody and unconscious on her bed. It's believed the attacker gained access to her room via a window, and a bloody axe was found nearby. The final person believed to have fallen victim to the Axeman was a man named Mike Pepitone, who was bludgeoned to death with an iron bar while he slept next to his wife Esther. Blood spatters covered the walls and a painting of the Virgin Mary. His wife described the attacker simply as large, with some reports stating 2 men were seen fleeing the scene. So who really was this evil jazz enchanter? Many theories have been proposed, yet none can claim certainty. As previously mentioned, some have whispered Mafia involvement, that the Axeman was an enforcer, striking down Italian grocers who refused to pay tribute to the shadowy group called the Black Hand. Others, more superstitious, believed the letter's own claim, that the Axeman was not of flesh and blood at all, but some spectre from the underworld. Then there was the case of Joseph Mumphrey. This is a tale within a tale, for in December of 1920, Mike Pepitone's wife Esther, who had since remarried, gunned Mumphrey down. She claimed that he was the same man who ended the life of her late husband Mike, the Axeman's presumed final victim, and also behind the disappearance of her current husband, Angelo Albano. But was Joseph truly the Axeman, or merely an unfortunate rogue who crossed paths with a vengeful widow? Unfortunately, the records provide no conclusive answer. And so, by 1921, the Axeman mysteriously vanished into legend. Perhaps he met his end in some forgotten alleyway, or lived out his days in peace, content in the knowledge that he outwitted the law. Or maybe he was planning his next kill when Esther took him down that fateful day in 1920. We shall never truly know. The streets of New Orleans have long since forgotten the echo of the Axeman's steps. Yet, if you find yourself wandering the misty corridors on a quiet night and the strains of jazz music reach your ears, you may wonder if it's a local musician or an echo of the past of something far more sinister. It's possible that the Axeman's shadow still lingers, watching and waiting for the music to die down. Thank you for watching, and thanks once again to this episode's sponsor, June's Journey. You can download the game for free right now by using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. Right then, take care, and I'll see you next time with another story that will make you say, well, I never.